found this on the Peace Trail Project that I think this is important to have in the interview, and I wanted to say this for the record because I also saw you interviewed on YouTube, and you were had very strong feelings about this. And let me just read this quote. "I'm amazed by the intense hatred for hippies that still resonates across America. They represent the one social group that can be bashed at will by anyone, anytime. The truth is, hippies are as American as apple pie or baseball and deserve a place of respect in American history. So why are they constantly slandered, vilified, and ridiculed in every form of the media?" And then you preface this by saying, "The counterculture deserves the same basic religious rights and protections as any established religion." I didn't know this. One thing that I do hear all the time, "Oh, you're just a hippie." And that bugs the heck out of me too, especially since I've been working on this project, and I understand after talking to Steve Gaskin and being in the Bay Area and the people that had the experiences, that when you throw out the term, "Oh, you're just a hippie," which is still a term that some people use, even a ridiculing term towards someone from the 60s who may not have even been a hippie, but you're just a hippie.
It's a dirty word.
Your thoughts on this?
Well, and you can tell the social conditioning that's going on, because if you go into an elementary school and you ask kids their impressions of hippies, it's all going to be negative. And it started very early. I mean, I think I first became aware of how this situation worked when I was very isolated when I was in graduate school. I was just studying, trying to get straight A's and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the punk movement started. And my initial experience of punk was only what I got from the mainstream media. Time magazine, the nightly news.
Mm.
And I thought punks were ridiculous, absurd, just disgusting. And that was the impression that was being created in the mass media. Similar to the way that the impression they've created of hippies is dirty, stupid, lazy, perpetually intoxicated. They've created stereotypes, and they push people away from these things by the stereotypes. So, and it's very effective the way this stuff goes down. Basically, the same kind. It's an expression of bigotry, cultural bigotry. People don't realize this, but it's very strong. It's very powerful. If the only hippies people see on TV are being ridiculed, or they're the bad guy in the movie, then people aren't going to have any kind of positive associations with hippies. The fact that Stephen Gaskin is practically unknown today after everything he's accomplished, the fact that Stephen Gaskin has never been interviewed or seen on national television for any reason, after creating his own Peace Corps, the most successful counterculture community in the world, it just shows you, if they would just balance. I don't mind that they want to make fun of us and ridicule us.
Mm-hmm.
If they would just show some of the positive stuff and put our role models and our spokespeople and let them have a say once in a while. Let them speak back. But we're not on the map. It's like we don't exist. Most people act like if you're a hippie, you should have died by now. You shouldn't even be alive, because hippies aren't allowed to be around anymore because they're embarrassing people. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the attitude of people is, don't, you know what I mean? Nobody wants to be called that name. It's it would be a mark of shame. So, I just think people are missing,
See, I learned something from Stephen. I've done 200 plus interviews, but I'll never forget this in the interview I had with him on the phone. I hope to meet him in person again this summer. But he said that the hippies were very upset with Janis Joplin. Why? She drank. We don't drink.
Right.
We don't drink alcohol and liquor.
Right.
Hippies don't
She was
drink.
She was
We
Texas.
do drugs and
Right.
smoke, but we
Right.
don't do alcohol. And when she was around them, she was doing something that was a no-no.
Well, there were
And-
lots of hippies that drank alcohol too, but it's just that
Yeah.
alcohol was perceived as not being an enlightening substance.
Mhm.
And the people that got on alcohol, those are the first to die. The heavy drinkers of every culture, the heavy drinkers of every generation, those are the ones that die in their 50s and 60s.
That's right, you're right.
Their livers are gone. You know what I mean? I mean, Jack Kerouac's dead early in his life because he's a drinker. Same thing goes for Ken Kesey. So the ones that were heavy into drinking,
Mhm.
so there were hippies that were heavy into drinking, but they're gone.
You also say in this interview here that that the hippie relationship to cannabis, I gotta make sure cannabis is sacred, similar to the Native American relationship to the buffalo. The plant produces food, clothing, shelter, fuel, and medicine. Jack Kerr is not a hippie, but he is the closest thing to a hippie Moses.
Right.
Could you go in a little more detail on that? Because I think there's still the perception out there. I've been reading a lot lately about what's going on in California, and I interviewed Dennis Perrone. I met him in person, and I understand the importance and links between marijuana and cancer research and a lot of other things that are going on in terms of helping people that are sick. But could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's perception a lot of people have toward hippies and other bunch of drug addicts that smoke and take heavy drugs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, marijuana was the, like I said, in On the Road, Kerouac goes to Mexico, he smokes marijuana for the first time. He describes a religious experience. Can't call it anything but what it is. He has a religious epiphany on marijuana in Mexico, and it's pretty much the climax of On the Road. And so that sent 100,000 young kids to find marijuana in search of a religious epiphany. And many of them found it. So we didn't know anything more about the plant than that. It was the opening of the door of perception for most of us. Was our first experience with marijuana. And I think if you look at the book, Really the Blues by Mez Mesro.
Okay.
So Mez, real name Milton Mesro, is a Jewish kid in Chicago who becomes a juvenile delinquent. It's got to be the 20s. It's got to be the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so he's in reform school, and he meets some black kids that turn him on to what would be called at that time probably Dixieland. This new music, Dixieland. Okay, it's just coming up the Mississippi River, just made its way to Chicago. He decides to go get a clarinet, and he's so in love with this music that he devotes the rest of his life to it. Very early on, from meeting these black musicians, they introduce him to what they call gauge. That's their name for marijuana. And marijuana is the thing that helps unite these guys. It helps them blow better solos. It helps them unify their energies. And they understand this, that it's having, I mean, when I talk about spirituality, all I'm talking about is energy, because that's all it is. It's not complicated. Some people think it's a lot more complicated than it is. Everything is energy. All matter is just an energy system that's unified. So when the people hold meditations, they're unifying their energy. when basketball teams put their hands together up in high in energy like that? That's a mudra. They're unifying their energy. This is all about energy. Spirit, we learned a lot about spirituality from basketball. High five came from basketball. That's like a mudra. It's a way for us to share energy. I mean, you can do it. It's pretty powerful. Just eyeball to eyeball, you can shoot energy to somebody. And energy has flavors. So you can shoot a mean energy, you can shoot a happy energy, you can shoot a love energy. See what I mean? Or you can shoot a sexual vibe energy. You can toss any ball you want, but it's all energy. So spirituality is just about energy. That's all it is. So all energy systems can harmonize or they can disharmonize. So the polarities can repel or they can attract. In any energy system, you have that option. You can not connect. You can just be a total dead battery. You can repel. You can attract. All right, so I don't know. The best way for me to describe this is if there's a forest and a predator beetle attacks, and let's say this forest is 200 miles wide, and a predator beetle attacks on the southern edge of the forest. According to science, the trees 100 miles away will start manufacturing some kind of enzyme to fight the predator beetle that appeared at the forest 100 miles away. Okay. Now, Jung would call this the collective unconscious. What I'm telling you is there's a lot more going on in the universe than what we know about. And energy systems work in mysterious ways to us. If you take 150 meditators who are experienced with deep meditation of harmonizing energy, love energy, and you take them to a major square in a major city, and you have them do a meditation for several hours, the crime rate in that city will go down for a few days. Now this has been proven by the Maharishi, who did this to show that these meditations we do, it's not just for our own benefit. This signal is bigger than just us doing it. It affects other things. So that to me, I'm trying to explain. My concepts of spirituality are a lot different than some guy in a cloud with a bunch of angels sitting around him playing harps, saying you go to hell, you go to heaven. That stuff to me is just ludicrous. But I'll tell you what is real. The entire universe and all the 10 dimensions, of which we think there are 10 now, which we only can fathom 4. So there's 6 out there that we can't even fathom. We have no idea what dark matter is, or any of those other dimensions. But all that stuff, all that together, all of it, everything, that all together is what I call God. And that all together has an energy. Just like that forest has an energy, just like those 150 people meditating have an energy. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's an energy that's flowing through everything, that comes from everything.
So the critics of people who take drugs, or I'm not just saying marijuana, but take drugs, is what they will always say is that you're escaping reality. If you don't need this, you don't need to go into some other realm if you can deal with the reality you're living in today. How do you respond to that? Because
we were what we thought we were doing in the 60s, and by the way, we took a lot of drugs we probably shouldn't have taken. But to us, this was uncharted territory. But what it was about really wasn't escaping this reality, but trying to connect up with that bigger energy. Because what psychedelics do is they open up your perceptions to those other dimensions, to those other psychic powers that are out there.
Do you know the exact moment when you knew I'm part of the counterculture? Was there a moment that said, "This is, this is me"? Was there?
Well, I think,
was there a specific event? Was there a combination of things? Was it one magic moment that I belong in the counterculture?
I'd say it was the Woodstock Festival.
Okay.
Because I was a little confused for a few years. You know, I didn't really have a moral foundation. We didn't know which way to go. Some people were telling us, you know, violence is cool. You know, hard drugs is cool. I never got into hard drugs, and but I got a little bit into violence, in that I would get drunk and smash things for fun. You know, like when we used to have parties, we would get roaring drunk, and somebody would have an old clunker car. We'd get a sledgehammer and just pound the shit out of that car, and just laugh hysterically. You know, and we thought that was fun. Or you know, or we'd just sit in the basement and throw bottles after we finish them against the wall, watch them break, and laugh hysterically. You know,
what's amazing about your life, and this is just from those when you were in junior high school, and then when you were in high school with that underground paper, you have started things, you've created things, for first times. Like you wrote a book on hip hop,
right?
And
well, I didn't start hip hop.
No, but you wrote a book on it, and you made the world kind of aware of it. And you wrote, and you talk about it in terms of it's part of the counterculture. It's
Congo Square.
It's Congo Square. But it's in a different year. It's not back in the '60s. It's now could be in the '80s.
Yeah.
And you also your work with Art After Midnight. Your work with High Times magazine. Your the creation of the Heritage of Stone. You're involved in the Counterculture Hall of Fame. You're involved in so many creations, and what you're really doing. You're living what a boomer and what an activist is supposed to be doing. Is I want to make a difference in this world, and this is how I'm going to make a difference with something I believe. You're using all of your experiences, and you believe in something, and you want to share it, and you want to awaken people. Okay.
Right.
Is the hip hop, for example, and the break dancing and those things? Those things are of a specific time, but you see the links between what was and what is now, and that. Could you explain a little bit about that? What is it within you that makes you want to be so creative? You do these things for the first time. You're a first timer.
I always try to rally all my buddies together and have a good time, but at the same time, do something meaningful. You know, so you know, I stumbled around with a lot of stuff too. I mean, I've learned a lot in just the last 10 years that I didn't really understand. The things like the whole connection with John Cage didn't really come to me till a couple of years ago. And I think I was looking at some of the old Tin Whistles, and I saw the review of the John Cage thing, and I started to think, well, I have these feelings now about how to harmonize people and how to create energy systems and beneficial ones. And wasn't that what Cage was doing? Of course that's what he was doing. And, you know, and isn't that what, you know, like I understand that's what Jim Wilson was doing when he organized those events, that he basically took a very shattered population of kids and harmonized them through these events, and that was a spiritual thing that happened, that our energies united, you know, and at Woodstock, that feeling I had of harmony with all these millions, you know, 500,000 people, you know, it's like, it's not a mystery, it's easy to do, and we could have huge, big peace rallies and meditations for ending violence, that would be tremendously beneficial and therapeutic and healing. But society doesn't do it. It's kind of like Indians can't play drums here. It's, our biggest ceremonies, and they are ceremonies, is the Super Bowl. Right. And you got to understand, like I said, energy has flavors, and I don't have anything against warrior culture, and I understand it. The great warriors, you know, the athletes are the great warriors, and the military are the great warriors, and the police are the great warriors, and there are great warriors. And by the way, if you're attacked or you have a problem, there's nothing like having a great warrior, you know, to protect you. They form a very fundamental and essential role in society. So we worship warrior culture, and we should. But it's kind of wiped the whole peace culture off the map. We don't worship peace culture. People are embarrassed by it. There are times when I try to do an Om circle, and I would see people like look disgusted and walk away. I'm not going to hold hands with you. I'm not going to do an Om with you. You know, it's like they're afraid of that, or they think I'm trying to pull them into some kind of cult or something like that. So I mean, they don't understand. No, by holding hands, it's better, easier for us to join our energies and harmonize. By saying the Om, it's like a song we can all sing. There's no words to it, but the vocalizations of our voices together, that's like the holding of the hands, but it's the holding of the voices. And our minds are too. They're the same thing. It's like, you know, it's like in basketball, you can see those little ceremonies the team does, like the putting their hands together, or they have all the teams have their own individual little ceremonies of how they're going to harmonize their energies. And it always involves speaking at some point or saying something together. Ho! You know, or Dicks go! Or whatever they say, and whatever it is, they're vocalizing. And that's part of the harmonization of the energies. So an Om circle is just the most efficient way to quickly harmonize people's energies. And it works. And you can't get people to do it. And they think there's something weird if you try and do it. But they understand sitting in church with a hymn book, singing the hymn, staring at the altar. They understand that. That's a harmonization of energy. Everybody's harmonizing, you know,